Expansion in the NFL does not happen often, but when it does, it's pretty exciting because a whole new franchise could pop up in your town. You have a new team to support. But the last time they did this was 2002 with the Houston Texans, making them the youngest team in the league. And almost 20 years old. They'll be 20 years old this year, actually. And the NFL, to expand, would have to find a buying city and then add some other teams so the divisions aren't lopsided like how they used to be, with some divisions having like 5 or even 4 teams. It was just a mess. So they'd have to add multiple teams. If they wanted to have every division have a new team, they'd have to add 8 teams, giving the league 40 teams. So that's what I decided to do. I kind of wanted to predict where I think the NFL will expand to, because I think it'll happen. There's just no telling if it'll be like 5 years in the future, 25 years, or even 50. But I think when they expand, I think they'll go out to some of these cities and also just throw out some ideas so we can see just some interesting places, you know? Some that are like, oh yeah, I can see that happening. Others are just shot in the darks that either have no chance of happening at all or just a fun place. Oh, and I know like some of the team names are stupid. I just had fun with this. But now, let's get on into the first expansion team. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention was that I made these logos, and yes, I know they all look terrible, but I just decided I'd try and make the logos since Madden took out the feature where you can create teams. So, instead of doing them in Madden kind of how I originally wanted to, you get my terrible stock photos. And the new team for the NFC North, I'm going to be honest, I don't know why I put this team here, but I chose Portland, Oregon because they have a pretty giant population of 662,549 people. They already have an NBA franchise, so why not have an NFL team that can disappoint them every year? And I went with the name the Portland Volcanos because Portland has volcanoes. I really couldn't find anything else. They have an NBA team, and they have volcanoes. For the NFC South, I chose Charleston, South Carolina, and for the population, I'm not really sure because I saw like 2 accounts that said 421,000, which is what I went with because I saw it twice, but I also saw like 5 other different populations ranging from as low as 140,000 to as high as 819,000. So honestly, I'm not sure, and I'm just going to go with 421,000 because I saw that twice, and it was the only one that I actually saw multiple times, so yeah, that's what I'm going with for the population. And also, they'd be a great place for a team because they do not have any professional teams, no NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, or MLS team, so they would pay a lot of money for a team they could actually support, so they wouldn't have to cheer on the Panthers or Falcons because it's depressing. And the team name I chose was the Manatees. Yes, I told you some of these were stupid. But for this one, I kind of wanted, like, an animal team, just like a silly, I guess, animal team. I thought of the Pelicans when making this, how it's, like, just a non-threatening animal. But I think it would be cool to be a Manatee fan. They'd definitely be my second team if they were in the NFL. And I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the video, but some of my decisions do, like, reshape or move divisions. For, like, the NFC East here, I chose St. Louis, Missouri. And their team, obviously the Rams, considering the city sued the NFL for $1 billion back in 2017 because they were unhappy they lost their football team. I think it's safe to say they are pretty passionate about football. And they recently settled that lawsuit for only a measly $790 million. So, I guess it wasn't all bad. They got $790 million to try and relocate a new team or try and pry the Rams back to St. Louis from the NFL. And my reasoning with this is obviously St. Louis really wants an NFL team again, and the Chargers can just keep SoFi Stadium. I mean, they built that giant brand new stadium in the shape of the Rams logo, but it's a dual-use stadium for both the Chargers and the Rams. That doesn't matter. The Chargers can just play in the Rams stadium and get screwed like they usually do by their fans and their stadium, because they have neither. The NFC West, I chose Oklahoma City. And they are going to be the Tornadoes. It's kind of close to the Thunder, the other team in Oklahoma City, and also because they are in Tornado Alley. Makes sense. They have a population of 669,000, They have a very passionate fan base, as shown with Oklahoma City, and they will support their team through thick and thin unless Katie leaves again. Thunder and tornadoes are most commonly seen together during a very bad storm, like when the Thunder lost by an NBA record of 73 points. The AFC North goes to Louisville, Kentucky with a population of 615,000. They don't have an NFL, NBA, NHL, or current MLB team similar to Charleston. But I did find out that they had an MLB team back in 1882 to 1891 in a league that just shut down. They were called the Colonels, the Eclipse, and then the Colonels again before they folded and joined the National League from 1892 to 1899. And I once again couldn't think of really anything besides the Louisville Derby, which is what I went with, which the only other things I could think of were KFC and Colonel Sanders. And I think Derby is a much more fitting name than the Louisville Colonel Sanders. For the AFC South, I decided to go with another Texas team down in San Antonio, Texas. They have a population of 1.5 million, and yes, I know it's another Texas team, but Texas just had to be on the level of New York, California, and Florida of having 3 teams. And they have enough land to build a massive Texas-style stadium, because everything's bigger in Texas. Just look at the Cowboys' lighting bills. And the Cowboys like to get brighter than Waco. And the name I decided to come up with was the San Antonio Alamo. Once again, I kind of struggled with some of these things because, like, I didn't want to necessarily name them after, like, a place or a person specifically, but I just felt like the Alamo was just perfect because it's just like a symbol for Texas, and this is the only one I named after, like, a place, but I just thought the Alamo was fitting just because of how important it is to Texas and kind of U.S. history as well. And for the AFC East, we have another place that lost its team that it formerly had, Boston, Massachusetts. If you didn't know, the Patriots were originally in Boston before being relocated to New England, and Tom Brady ruining everyone's dreams for about 20 years. It has a population of 695,000, and obviously has a rich history in helping the U.S. gain independence from Great Britain, being one of the original 13 colonies. So I decided to go with, like, the colonial and, like, revolutionist route. So I ended up going with the Boston Revolutionist, or Revolutionaries, the Boston Mayflower, or the Boston Colonies. Honestly, if I could name them or just move the Patriots back, I would do that, just because the Patriots just have such a good name, because if you're thinking, like, colonialization in America or the Revolutionary War, you're most likely thinking Boston and the Patriots that fought for the freedom. As much as I hate the Patriots for Tom Brady's reign on the NFL, they probably have the best and most accurate name in the NFL, considering they used to be in Boston. And finally, for the ones that I think have the best shot of actually happening, the AFC West, Salt Lake City, Utah. They have a population of 200,000, and they are pretty boring. Like, one of the only interesting things I could find is that back in 2002, they hosted the Winter Games. And Utah, obviously being known for Mormons, I decided to go with the Utah Mormons or the Utah Mountains, because there are mountains in Utah. And I'm not joking, I think it's probably the most boring U.S. state. All you have is Mormons and mountains. Sounds like a good afternoon to me. Here's part 2 of the video, and don't worry, part 2 and part 3 of this video will not take long at all. Part 2 are places that I think have a decent shot of getting an NFL team. The first part obviously was places that I think have the best shot of getting a team or will get an expansion team. But to kick it off, we have San Diego, California, and I do not have divisions for this, but I said San Diego. They have a population of 1.4 million and had the Chargers ripped from them. And am I the only one that thinks they should go back to San Diego and just leave LA? I mean, what can you do in San Diego or California in general? Just get stuck in traffic? While I was looking up San Diego, I managed to find whatever this is. I'm not really sure. And for the team name for San Diego, they either get the Chargers back or get a brand new team called the Wildfire, since they just love to do that over there in California. And the second team that has a pretty good shot is Phoenix, Arizona, with a population of 1.7 million. They have a lot of deserts like the Mojave and the Sonoran. I probably butchered that, so I decided to go with the name the Phoenix Desert. Can you tell I really had no clue what to do there? For the last city that has a decent shot would be Montgomery, Alabama, with a population of 197,000. And Alabama, though, already does have the greatest team to ever exist ever with the Rocket City Trash Pandas. They are a minor league team for the LA Angels. They have no professional teams. The closest would be Alabama Crimson Tide, who are going to win another national championship this year, and honestly can go to the NFL after the Vikings lost to the Lions, giving them their first win of the season. Yes, I know that happened a while ago. And now for the third and final part, the not going to happen, but it would be cool. We're going to kick it off with Hawaii. I mean, that'd be an awesome place to have a team. They held the Pro Bowl there that one year, but just I think one of the main problems would just be jet lag. That's the main problem with all of these, and why I think that all three of these are not going to happen is due to jet lag or like traveling, because with the second one here for Montreal, you would have to deal with Canada's customs and abide by Canada's rules, like how in the MLB, I think it was the Toronto Blue Jays were forced to play either in Buffalo, New York, or Florida for like half the season, so they had to come into the U.S. to stay, and you would also have to adapt to all of Canada's rules and laws, and especially like with the players constantly going over the border into the country. And for the final one, Berlin, jet lag would just be terrible because the closest teams would be on the East Coast, and like it is just too far of a distance to travel. They are holding games in Germany, but just for like a team to be in Germany and constantly have to fly back and forth between the US and Germany, and same thing with Canada. They would have to follow all the laws and restrictions that Germany hasn't set along with the US, and it would just be too much of a hassle, I guess, to just have the teams fly from just different countries like that. And with that, I am now done making terrible teams that probably won't happen because, let's be honest, if the NFL expands, it'll probably just be in New York, Texas, California, somewhere with a load of teams that don't need any more teams. But I want to thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more content like this, you can subscribe. Most importantly, I just want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.